Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Education on Fire show. Apologies for the slight late start. We had, I'd say, a few technical gremlins. It was more just a kind of making sure we could share everything, do everything that we wanted to in the best possible way. I appreciate Cynthia being so patient as we've got all that going. I appreciate you being here and staying with us. So thank you so much indeed. If you're new to the Education on Fire podcast, or indeed the Education on Fire show, this is the live version of the podcast, a chance where we can share things obviously much more visually here on YouTube. And it's a real kind of honor to be able to bring sort of really practical and insightful things from people that I chat to around the world in various different ways. And indeed, it is Cynthia that I spoke to back on episode 260, sort of back in 2022. And so she very kindly sort of kept in touch, and I've sort of been able to give us the opportunity for her to share her work and for me to be able to offer more to the people in obviously in my community as well, because teachers, educators, parents, we know that they are people that really do need mindfulness. They are people that need to be able to look after themselves, and I think having a really good strategic way to be able to do that by someone who really knows what they're doing is a really positive thing to be able to do. So Cynthia, let's bring you on. You can say hello to everybody, and actually then we can start sharing some wonderful conversation. Hello, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks so much for having me, Mark. I'm excited to be here.
Fantastic. So for anyone who doesn't know Cynthia and you want to get deep dive into her, as I said, episode 260 and wherever you get your podcasts or on the website there as possible, but give us a kind of a potted kind of understanding of where you're coming from in terms of this workshop and why it's so important for you.
Absolutely. I loved what you said, Mark, about how parents, teachers, kiddos, how we all really need mindfulness, as I like to often see it as a foundation, a support for our creative practice, our teaching practice, showing up as a parent, showing up in the world as the best version of ourselves that we want to be. And so I run an online business called Mindful Creative Muse. I've been doing that for about 7 years, and I mostly share mindfulness and really simple art practices with parents, teachers, and kiddos, just to help support their own personal daily lives when we're really busy, when we need really simple self-care tools for ourselves, as well as supporting teachers so they can share with in K through 12 schools or with adults. So I'm happy to share today. We're going to be diving into what I like to call art as meditation, a very brief workshop and deep dive into some practical tools and tips that you can do on your lunch break, when you're sitting at a stoplight, even when you're with your kiddos, or if you're a teacher, whether you're a parent, that you can share with others as well. So it's going to be really practical, and you'll walk away with how and why can mindfulness and art be helpful in our daily lives.
Amazing. And I think the key thing for me there is that sense of we want it to be something which is manageable. And if it happens to be a minute, and it's the minute that you've got that day because you really need that opportunity, then that's what you can do. I think so many people put off having a practice of any description because it's, I don't have an hour a day, or I'm not able to get to the forest or get to the sea, or whatever it is that their perception is that you need to do in order to create something like this. So I think that sort of practical way is really key. So Cynthia's got a presentation. She's also going to be showing us some of her drawings and everything as well. If you would like to comment, then please do tell us in the chat. Make sure everything's working fine for you. Tell us where you're from. Tell us how you know either about Education on Fire or Cynthia, and we can share those things. And we'll share some of those things if anyone wants to comment first of all. And then I won't interrupt the presentation and everything, but we can come back and share some more things at the end as well. So yeah, feel free if you'd like to share where you're from and how you know either of us. Then we'll do that first of all as we go through. So tell us what's new in your life since we spoke back in 2022.
Oh my goodness. I feel like so much has happened in a couple of years. At this point now, I have 4 internationally accredited teacher trainings in mindfulness and art. I think maybe at the time we spoke in 2022, I had about 2. So I've really grown out that part of my work and my passion, and at this point have trained about 400 educators worldwide. I've bought a house in the last couple of years, and have just been having my own time with my own practice. I've been doing a bit more singing, which has been really fun. So yeah, I feel like a lot has shifted, and also just enjoying some spaciousness as well. So sometimes not doing anything is great. Yeah,
amazing. So you've not been slacking in the last year or so since I've seen you been sort of full on going through. Yeah. Absolutely. Brilliant. So Susan's here. Sunny Coast. Yeah. Oh, fantastic. Thank you so much for being here. One of the things I really wanted to be able to do for Education on Fire was, we share a podcast that's all recorded. I love the fact that this is a bit more interactive and we get the chance to sort of have these ongoing conversations, but also to sort of share some practical hints and ideas of what's helpful. I'm a musician by trade, so I perform, I do some music teaching, which is how I got involved in education and sharing all of those stories. And I wanted to be able to bring people on to sort of, like I said, that you can go and do this, or you can find this person, or you can enter into their world so they can see what's going on. So yeah, thank you so much for being here, Susan. I really do appreciate it. So enough about me. Let's make sure we have enough time to be able to get everything done. I shall take you into your presentation, and then you can take us from there. Thank you so much.
Perfect. Thank you so much. So I am excited actually that you use the word practice also. So a lot of what I'll be sharing today are things that you can do in 1 to 5 minutes that you can really fit into a very busy, hectic lifestyle. And if you have more time, then you can explore it longer. But I like to have that permission that you can do it very simply. So I mentioned we'll be diving into art as meditation. And I have a bold statement at the bottom of this, which is how mindful art and journaling can change your life. It's changed my life, as well as people that I have taught and worked with and shared it with. And so I'm excited to dive in with you. This is just an overview of where we're going to be diving in, but I'll share more as we go. I'm going to be talking just briefly here at the start, and then I'm going to share some practices. And this workshop actually I created about a year ago or 6 months ago when we reached 10,000 subscribers on our YouTube channel, which is Mindful Creative Muse. So if this is your first time ever hearing of me, meeting me, I know many of you will already know me, but if this is your first time, I live in Colorado in the United States. I teach mindfulness and art. This is my 18-year-old, soon to be 19-year-old sweet cat, and I love everything creative. So I want to just share, before I talk about what is mindful art, what are the benefits, how it can benefit you if you're a teacher, parent, if you want to share it with kiddos. I want to just briefly share how I came into this work in like a minute or less, so very fast, because I feel so strongly when I am teaching and sharing that I say to my teachers that I train all the time that we teach what we know and we teach from our own practice. So I'd be curious to hear in comments or in the chat as well, if you consider yourself to be creative, if you have a meditation or mindfulness practice. There's no right or wrong answers, but just curious. And if you are someone who's creative, you may have already experienced for yourself the power of creativity. I discovered a lot of this work many years ago when I was treated for cancer, and felt really passionate about sharing it with other people. So I earned my MFA, a ton of different certifications, and I usually joke I had coursitis, which if you're a teacher out there and you have certifications, you may understand that as well. And sometimes those are really needed and to help support our growth. And so I did end up creating 4 certifications that were kind of a culmination of my 20 that I had, as well as creating my own practices. So here's what I believe. We'll jump into the practice itself. I believe that meditation can be fun, and meditation, mindfulness, really of just returning back to the present moment without judgment, or with as much non-judgmental awareness as possible. And really, I like to just refer to that as being kind to ourselves, being kind to what's happening and coming up in the moment. I mentioned meditation can be fun because as I mentioned before, art is meditation. I believe when we're creating art, whether it's doodles that we're doing with our 5-year-old, whether you're teaching it in high school or you're teaching a yoga class and you're threading it in, or just doing it for yourself, that we can meditate through art. So we don't have to be sitting on a cushion. We don't need to be in a rigid, uncomfortable posture. There's so many different ways that we can have moments of more space and peace, and we can do that through art, which is really great, and it's accessible for all ages, which is nice. I believe Mark shared this already, but I believe we're all creative, and that we have 5 minutes, 2 minutes, 1 minute that we can spare to really tend to our self-care. And I also believe that mindfulness in art is about connection. So I find for myself and the people, educators and students that I work with, the more that we have moments of mindfulness threaded through, or a creative practice, or something that helps us to be more present in the moment, I feel like it's a way that we can connect with ourselves, but also that we're able to then, I find I can connect more with other people that I'm working with friends, family, that we can show up more as the person we want to be in that moment. So I want to share a couple of benefits of these practices. If you're like me and you like to have more information before I actually switch over to my tabletop and share some of these things that you can do very simply. So mindfulness and art practices is something that's for everyone, whether you feel like you're not creative, that you can't meditate, if you're a teacher or educator, if you're a therapist, it's something that you can weave into your personal practice or in your professional practice as well. And the key part about mindfulness with art is that we focus on the process, not the final product. So even if you are, let's say you're an art educator and you've had a long time art practice, you may already feel like you have strong skill sets with that, and you can still learn something new with this. So regardless of where you are in your path, it can really meet you where you are, which is great. So the other thing that I notice with mindful art practices, or really with self-care practices, I'll say this, is oftentimes I hear people say, and I've said this before too, that I don't have the time. If it's a new skill or practice that we're doing, we might say to ourselves, I'm not good enough. I don't know how. It's not going to turn out the way that I want. If you're not saying that and you're an educator or a parent, you may hear also your kiddos in your life saying that. And that those thoughts and those limiting beliefs, and what I like to say comes from our inner critic, can just block us. It can stop us, and it can stop our kiddos and us as adults from even wanting to try that new thing or to do it in a joyful way where we're really enjoying it. And we've found through studies, you may know this already, but the more that we enjoy something as we're learning, the more we integrate and remember that learning. So I feel like this is such a fun thing to include. It also, mindful art can be great if you are anxious, if you're stressed, if you're coming close to burnout, if you feel blocked, and again, it can offer something new to add into a practice. So these are some benefits, which is that we found that mindfulness and weaving it with art practices can be helpful for managing stress. I mentioned earlier, it's a way we can be kinder to ourselves. We can find that through some of these practices, by having more self-care, or if you are going down the path of wanting to share and teach with others, that it can be also where you have this personal transformation. And what I love about a lot of mindful art practices, I'm going to share 2 to 3 different exercises with you today and variations of them, is that you can literally do these same couple of practices every day for the next year, either for yourself or with kids you're sharing, and it'll be different every single time because we're different in the moment. And so I like that mindful art practices can be, it's like a mirror reflection, reflecting back what's happening in the moment. So I'm going to share this part very briefly before I switch over to my tabletop, but I just want to share information about how is this different from if someone was teaching a pure art class or purely mindfulness, or how is this different? And I refer to the mindful art and journaling practices that I've created and have done and taught for a long time as Muse Journaling. It's just a fun name that I enjoy. But if you're taking an art class or if you're teaching an art class, as an example, this could be any sort of new skill that you're learning. If we're focusing only on the technique or on meeting, the end product, on trying to reach a grade, etc., then sometimes we can feel frustrated. The inner critic can come up. We might not feel good enough. We can compare what we're doing to others. I can't tell you how often when I was making art in class that I was always looking over to someone else's paper to see what they were doing and how they were doing it, as affirmation of what I should be doing. So what I love about mindful art is that there's no right or wrong way, and it's very permissive giving, whether you're doing that for yourself or when you're sharing it. And I'll share more about that. And so by having mindfulness woven into, let's say you're at a traditional art class or a skill building class, and then by having the foundation of mindfulness added in, we find that it can help us to drop into a more relaxed place, or a more like baseline place with our nervous system. We can sometimes drop into a flow state, and that's often, flow state was created by two psychologists, and it's really that place where something is not so difficult that you want to give up or you feel stuck, and not so easy that you are checked out or bored or numb, or you can't pay attention to whatever that thing is. And what we also find is, what I've found is that as you combine mindfulness and art, and there's more space and permission to create and to notice what's happening in the moment, we tend to, I find, people end up creating more, even if it's just 1 or 2 minutes. That can lead to more inspiration. And then the fun part, which we won't have as much time to dive into today, but I do this and dive deep in a lot of my classes and trainings, is that we can also make meaning of the marks that we're noticing, of what we're reflecting onto the page. And when we do that, we can have deeper insights. It can be great for transformation. If you're working with kiddos in high school, or even younger kids, or as an adult, it's something that there's ways to modify the practices to meet everybody where they are. But it can be almost like this personal journey, journal that you have, like a diary, but it's at a deeper level, because sometimes we can express things much more through images with words. So this is just a brief example of some different kinds of practices that are included. But for now, I want to be sure we have a lot of time that we can be exploring these practices, some very short, but where you'll notice there's a lot of space in them. And so I want to be sure we have time to do that. So I'll show just an example, and then I'm going to switch over to my tabletop. So the first one we're going to explore, I love to refer to as breath doodles. Whether you already love to doodle, or you already draw, or you don't, regardless of what age you are, this is something that can be shared and adjusted. And all you need really is paper and a pen, or a pencil, or a colored pencil, or even a crayon. And the key part is that we're syncing up our marks on the page with our breath. And so I like to see this as definitely a visual meditation, that we can automatically see our breath on the page. And it really helps, especially if you're already feeling stressed yourself, or if you feel like you can't meditate, or if you're having a kiddo who's struggling with focusing, or perhaps they're needing some more space to calm down or come back to the present moment. These practices are really simple, they're very easy, and they're really effective. So I'll be sharing some of that, and then also we'll be sharing some different things around body scan, drawing meditations, and more. So I'm going to pause my screen here so I can come back to Mark. And I want to check in and see if you have any questions, or if there's anything in the chat or comments I should be aware of before switching over to my tabletop.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, amazing. Susan saying that she has a mindfulness practice and recently committed to doing daily sketching practice. Well, good. And tell us, is it did you set an amount of time, or did you just set the opportunity for it, or you just opened up the possibility? Because I'm always sort of keen as to where you start at that moment and how you're able to bring that through. And of course, yeah, as we said, and if you've got anything that you want to share, please do. If there's anything that you've been doing that is like this, or maybe something that you've been doing differently, but you're sort of interested in particularly the art side, and how that fits in from a meditation and a mindfulness and relaxation points of view. Yeah, put that in the comments, and we'll just pause here for a moment while we're doing that to allow you, and then we'll let Cynthia carry on and show all the things that she's going to do. So in terms of your workshops that you're doing, sort of obviously beyond this, how does it often work? Are you sort of in that position of kind of bringing people in and then having a particular set of workshops over a period of time? How do you sort of often gauge it?
Yes, that's a great question. So it really kind of depends I really like to mention that I tend to support two kind of groups of people. Some people who are really interested in kind of some light practices for themselves, for their own self-care. So that might be whether for them or they're doing it with maybe their kiddo at home. So for those workshops and offerings, oftentimes they're an hour or maybe up to a couple of hours where we're spending time together and I'm guiding us through, and then we have some time for sharing. Sometimes that's live, sometimes it's recorded where you can do it on your own. The Breath Doodles course that I have actually that has about 20 different practices, they're all broken down into about 5-minute recorded videos, so you can do it on your own. But the teacher trainings are those ones include not only the different practices, but also a lot around how are we facilitating, how are we planning our lessons, how are we managing and supporting our kiddos or adults in the group, how are we then marketing in a way that feels good and mindfully. And so that goes into more support, and those are through recordings, and then we also do live coaching calls. So it kind of depends. It's like a choose your own adventure, whatever people are curious about.
Yeah, I love that. Choose your own adventure. What a great phrase. Yeah, and that kind of thing. You sort of you enter your world and where you need it and how you want to grow within it, which is fantastic. Brilliant. Right, let me give you the chance to share everything that you've been chatting about.
Okay, perfect. I'm going to switch my video camera over. And then as I'm pulling that up, I just wanted to mention with Susan, who is working on, I love that you're doing a daily practice. What came to mind for me, just as some suggestions, I find that it's really helpful for me, or when I'm teaching for a daily practice, is to have some sort of like really simple place that you can go to, and maybe that's just a journal or it's a table you're always going to be at, or a corner of a room, but that's something I find is really helpful. And then also I like to limit the actual supplies that I'm working with, so I might choose to do just one pen or just a couple of colors, because I find so much of this, whether it's for your own practice or especially if you're an educator and sharing with kids, is how can you make it really accessible and simple, so there's less, I think of it of like, how can I make this so there's less friction so I'm more likely to do the thing. And I'll say just this last part is that I find by having a creative limitation, that I've noticed this for myself, but also other people, that usually by having a limitation, it actually can help free up our creativity, because then we're not overwhelmed. I'm not walking in and there's an entire store of art supplies and I don't know where to begin. So I just wanted to mention that, but I'm so excited for you that you're exploring a daily practice. It's really something that can be lovely as it builds over time. So these are a couple of examples of the Breath Doodles practice that I mentioned. I'm going to share a couple, and one that I'll walk you through, and then also if you do have any kiddos in your life, I'll mention how you can potentially share with them, and depending on their ages. So we'll start very simple. I like to refer to this first one as just a simple heart breath. If you're familiar with heart math at all, it reminds me of heart math, but so I'm going to have a blank sheet of paper here, and I'm going to do this with a micron pen. You can do it with anything as long as it's just a writing utensil. And the key part about this practice is that we're syncing up our breath with the marks. And I want to mention a couple things before we begin, is that we're inhaling with the upward movement and exhaling with our downward movement. And sometimes the focus can be on, I'm making the mark and then I'm syncing my breath with it. But I encourage you to notice as best you can to have the mark almost like tracing your breath, following along with your breath. So I'm going to switch my journal this way just so it's not quite as long. And I'm starting on the left side of the page because I'm right-handed, but you might be more comfortable on the opposite side. And I'll show just a couple first, and then if you want to join me and sync up, you're welcome to either follow along with my breath, or I encourage you, once I get into a rhythm, you can follow along with your own. And you can do this with a pen. You can also use just your hand on your pant leg. If you're sitting at a stoplight briefly, you can do this. If you're in a work meeting, you can do this. And yeah, if you don't have a pen right now, you can just follow along. So I'm going to just come to the neutral part of the page, and first I'm just going to notice my pen marks. I'm noticing the sound as I move my pen across the page. I'm noticing how softly or hardly I'm holding the pen. I'm even noticing the temperature in the room, in the sounds around me. And then as I notice my next breath, I'll start to sync it up with my breath. So inhaling and exhaling. And what you may notice as you are inhaling and exhaling is that there's this natural pause that can happen between the breaths. And that's when you're curving around the top and bottom. So this can be a great visual focusing tool. I like to think about how with meditation, oftentimes we talk about having an anchor point. And so our anchor point might be the breath. In this case, it's both the breath and the marks on the page. And if you notice your mind gets distracted at all, that's definitely okay. It'll happen. You can just return back to the page, back to the pen in your hand. And you might notice certain things draw your attention more. So it might be the wobbliness of the line, that visual cue. It might be the sound of your pen moving on the page. You can also say to yourself as you're doing this, inhale and exhale. Or even, I am breathing in, I'm breathing out. Similar to a breath meditation, you can also count your breath. So you may count inhaling to 4 and exhaling to 4, just noticing what feels comfortable for you. So we'll start to bring this to a close, just noticing that next breath. You can allow it to return back to breathing without moving your pen across the page. And I want to mention a couple of things that you may notice as you do this practice. So my breath today is pretty steady. Sometimes, and I don't have an example here with me, sometimes I'll notice that my lines are really all over the place. And again, that's absolutely okay. It's really just a reflection of what we're noticing in the moment. It might be, sometimes I'll notice my line really gets altered if I have a distracting thought, and I might lose track of my breath and then come back. And sometimes you'll also notice that these kind of bars or lines start to cascade downward. And when that happens, usually it's because we have our exhalation is starting to elongate and become longer than our inhalation, which is usually an indicator that we're coming into more of a parasympathetic state, that we're starting to come into rest and digest and relaxing. Not always, but that can sometimes happen. In this case, my breath was pretty even, probably around 3 or 4 seconds each breath, which is why it looks even across the page. So this is something that you can do, again, with or without materials, wherever you are. And it's also something that if you are a teacher or a parent, you can share with your kiddos. I would recommend, depending on the age of the child, that you would want to use perhaps a crayon or some sort of softer material. You can use you can use graphite. This is like a thicker graphite. And then you also can, I won't demonstrate this, but just to kind of show, you can also have them place their hand on the page, and then you can trace using maybe a colored pencil or a crayon and trace the outline of their hand as you help guide for inhaling and exhaling, or you can demonstrate that as well, and they can do that on their own. And then you can always have them color in the hand or have some sort of other creative activity. So that can be something really cute and fun to do if you're a parent at home, and very simple and easy. So I mentioned there's about 20 different breath doodle practices. Each one I notice feels different. I notice a different experience with my breath. And so I want to share another one with you that not only integrates the breath and body, but also starts to notice our thoughts. And so starting to bring in another layer. And then we'll start to explore a different practice that not only focuses on our body and our thoughts, but also perhaps emotions. And so this one, I like to refer to this breath doodle practice as highline. And I want to share just a brief story about why that is here first. And so I used to have a partner actually who did a lot of slacklining and highlining. And he would often say that you're either on the line or you're not, as far as you're either here in the present moment, noticing what's happening, or perhaps we're not here. That and they've actually found this to be true with expressing creativity, that we're not able to be in a highly stressed state and be access creativity at the same time. We might be kind of oscillating back and forth quickly between those things, but that it's not something we're able to access at the same time. So I always thought that that was really interesting around you're on the line or you're not. And so he was mentioning about focus. And so this one, which is highline, I created because I started thinking about how I catch my thoughts when I get distracted. Excuse me, I'm coming off of a cold from a week or two ago. And so you might also have this experience. I'm going to stop and just take a drink of water really quick. You might have this experience of noticing thoughts coming in, and it might be something about the past or the future, and then you come back to whatever you're doing, and that might be that you're catching that when you're driving or you're working on a project. So it's very natural. It's just what the brain does. And so with this highline practice, each time you see a mark that goes towards the left, that indicates that I'm catching, that I'm having a thought about something that I would say is in the past. And then each time there's a line in moving to the right, it's me catching a thought that's forward thinking about something in the future. And so if you are noticing a thought coming in, but perhaps you don't even want to consider, is it past or future? You're just noticing you're not on the line. You can make some sort of mark. So maybe it's a circle or a scribble. So the marks themselves aren't as important as the practice of noticing what's happening in the moment with our thoughts. So I would love to share this practice with you now that you kind of have a sense of what it is. I'll share a couple of examples of what I'm noticing for myself, and then I'm just going to give more space that we can be here together, so you don't have as much distraction with me sharing. Sometimes people really enjoy the speaking, other times people want a bit of space, so I'll be sure to offer a bit of both. So I like to go vertical with this practice. And I'm just going to, again, notice the page. Sometimes I even just make sound on the page so I can really hear that and come to the present moment. And I'm just going to begin to start making a mark. Perhaps I'm noticing the wobbliness of the line again, even the shadows on the page. And I'm just noticing my microphone moving, so I'm having that as a thought or a distraction, coming back to the page. And so I just had a thought about a meeting I'm having later today. So we're not dwelling on whatever thoughts are coming in. We're also not judging any thoughts that we're noticing. We're mostly just having this as a visual cue of, oh, I'm off the line, and now I'm going to return back to the line. So it really is a practice. These can be really fun as well if you're sharing them with kids and then you're sharing and talking about what mindfulness is, or perhaps some other practices that I'll be showing here or that are in some of the other things that I share. I find it's just a really great visual tool. And once you have a lot of these, they can actually be other creative projects that you color in, that you make other more involved doodles. And you can just notice for yourself what helps you to stay on the line. And so for me today, it's really noticing that wobbliness of the line, that visual anchor. So I'm going to pause here and I'm sharing just kind of a couple of little tools and practices that you can do very quickly so you can get a taste of them, and you can always spend more time on these later. But this is something that I like to also mention that you can really vary it. So I'm doing it vertical here, but you can always have that adjusted. Sometimes I've had students or I've seen people where you have a little pocket journal. And so you can literally have a pen and a pocket journal that you keep in your purse, or if you have like a larger wallet or bag or something that you can have with you. I've actually done a lot of the breath doodle practices while I've traveled. And so sometimes I flew a handful of months ago and I was on the flight and did a lot of these when I was waiting for the plane to board instead of scrolling on my phone, which, as we know, those can be very distracting for us. And I'm guilty of that as well. That instead of pulling out my phone, I was doing some breath doodle practices. So it's really great. You can do this if you are a parent. You can do these practices, shortly before bed with your kiddos, first thing in the morning. You can do them on your lunch break. So they're really simple and it's lovely. So I'd like to show something that not only incorporates the body and the breath and our thoughts, but also bringing in some color, as well as perhaps noticing some of our emotions. So these different layers of our experience. And so this one I like to refer to as a body scan drawing meditation. And you may have seen different examples of this. I want to show a couple of examples. So this one I like to refer to as like a gingerbread person. I grew up making gingerbread cookies with my mom, so I always think about that. So there's a body scan meditation practice where you scan through your body either from top to bottom or bottom to top, just noticing any sensations that you're having. Maybe they're physical sensations like coolness or warmth or tension. Maybe it's tightness in your shoulders, which is where I often hold a lot of stress. Or you can also notice some people see colors or shapes. Some people might just imagine this tightness in my shoulders feels like, a red thread or something. So you might not see or experience colors, but you might just interpret that however you'd like. And so I always like to say with body scan drawing meditations that we're not trying to capture exactly our experience on the page. It's almost like a visual snapshot that is changing as we are creating it. And it doesn't have to be realistic. It's really just an indicator, another reflection of our experience. So I always just like to mention that there's no pressure. You don't need to have art skills for this. If you do have art skills, you could always do this as a body scan painting meditation and spend a lot more time. There are other mindful art practices where you can really explore more with different materials, but based on time today, I want to just share some really simple ones. So that's with the gingerbread outline, but you can also do this with a different type of container is what I like to say. And so these are two body scan drawing meditation examples in a triangle format. Sometimes I do them in circles. And when they aren't, I like the triangle format sometimes because I imagine that I'm sitting with my legs crossed. And so this would be more of my head area. This is my chest and stomach and midsection. And then if my legs were crossed, if you imagine like having butterfly wings here for legs, then that would would be your lower half of your body. So that one I really enjoy. Sometimes I stick with the gingerbread person or with a circle. So whatever you feel comfortable with exploring today, I wanted to show some options, but I'm going to guide us through a very brief body scan, and then we'll walk through some different ways that we can start making marks, as well as how you can notice and name your experience, whether it's through your body, your breath, your thoughts, or emotions. And then I'm going to offer some different writing prompts, questions, if you want to dive a little bit deeper. So just a whole little variety. So I'll leave these on the screen here just for a moment. And I'd love to just offer a brief body scan. And so you're welcome to keep your eyes open or closed, whatever feels more comfortable for you in this moment. And perhaps just noticing your breath first, since we were just connecting to that a moment ago. And there's no need to change your breath here. Allowing your breath to move however it would like. Perhaps noticing where you're feeling your breath the most. This might be near your nostrils or in your chest. Just noticing if you can hear any sounds around you beside my voice. Seeing if you can become aware of the sound that's coming from farthest away. Noticing the temperature in the room. Perhaps just noticing if any part of your body feels cool or warm. And then drawing your awareness all the way down towards your feet. Perhaps they're resting on the floor. Just noticing the weight of your feet on the ground. And if you're lying down or in a different type of chair, perhaps just noticing the parts of your body that are making contact with the support. And we'll start to gently draw our awareness up through our body. So just noticing your ankles, your calves. Becoming aware of any sensations as you move up through your body, perhaps tingling, tightness, warmth. And moving up your body through your knees and thighs. Noticing your whole body, the fronts and backs of your legs. Noticing your seat and your belly all the way to your low back. Perhaps becoming aware of your breath moving in the center part of your body. And as you draw your awareness up further towards your shoulders and your neck, just noticing if you have any places that are holding on or that you have tension. Perhaps offering a deeper breath to your body in this moment. And just scanning all the way down your arms to your hands and fingertips. Our hands are so alive with sensation, noticing coolness or warmth or tingles. And we'll move back up our arms towards our neck and face, being curious especially about the place between your eyebrows and around your eyes. Moving up all the way towards the top of your head, seeing if you can notice any sensations all the way at the top of your scalp. And then noticing if you can hold your entire body and your awareness with your breath, and seeing if any part of your body perhaps is speaking a little more loudly to you. That might be through sensations like tingling or tightness. You may see colors or shapes. You may notice certain thoughts or feelings coming up. And just noticing. And we'll take 3 breaths here together. If you'd like to join me, we'll inhale and exhale. Inhaling and exhaling. And inhaling and exhaling. And if your eyes were closed, you're welcome to flutter them open. We'll come to a fresh sheet of paper, and the invitation is to make any sort of marks that are related to your experience. So that might be that you're choosing a color to represent tension or tightness, or perhaps coolness that you felt. Perhaps writing down a word about any thoughts or emotions that came through. I'm going to do this in a circle today. And so there is no right or wrong way to do this. We're simply noticing. And I'll share afterwards a little bit about my experience so you can kind of have a deeper look and insight into some of the marks, as well as some other suggestions and things that you can explore. And then as you're doing this, as you're making marks or writing down words, just noticing if you're still aware of the sounds on the page. If you get distracted, just being kind to yourself and coming back to your materials. And you can always add words into your image or outside around your image. And if you're ever unsure, I like to sometimes pause, and you can close your eyes and check back in with your body. What am I feeling right now in this moment? What am I noticing with any thoughts or emotions? So you can go back and forth. And sometimes what I'll do as well as you're doing this is, as an example, I noticed tightness in my shoulders, as well as my toes felt especially cold. So I might go back and forth between noticing those two sensations and then capturing what that experience might be like, what I'm noticing is shifting and changing, if anything. So I'd love to offer some writing prompts as we get ready to close here. If you would like to add any additional words sometimes when people are first beginning with this, it can feel a bit difficult to notice exactly what some of our thoughts or emotions are. And so these writing prompts can help to deepen that as well. And so first, just noticing if you only could choose one word to express what you're feeling right now in this moment, or your experience with this body scan. If you could only choose one word, perhaps to share with a friend over tea, what would that one word be? And there's no right or wrong. There's no judgment around it. You're just being curious. And you're always welcome to put that word in the comment box or chat if you'd like. But this can also be just for you on your page. And I'm going to write this at the top. The word that's coming to mind for me is contrast. What I often notice with mindful art practices, but also mindfulness in general, is I love that there can be this space that we can hold what's coming up in the moment. And oftentimes that is, there's like a duality. We might feel tired and happy. We might feel, distracted, but also really grateful. So we can have these dualities. I notice this tightness and coolness. And so having enough space to just notice and be with that. And so I'd like to offer a couple of writing prompts before we close here. And this first one is what I most want you to know is. So what I most want you to know is. And I like to do this as almost like a free writing. So first thought, best thought, whatever you want to have down as your experience. If you get stuck, you can write, I have more to say. I have more to say until something else comes out. And the invitation is that this is a continuation of what you just noticed in your body and in this image. So what I most want you to know is, and I'll share what comes up for me afterwards. So what came through for me today is what I most want you to know is it's okay to notice differences, to be with them, to make space for them. This is human. And so the last prompt I'll offer you that you can do later on your own is the message I have for you is. The message I have for you is. And sometimes I like to just set a timer for 5 minutes and just write. And that might be, a message coming through this image or the meditation. It might just be something throughout your day, having space to get that out. And so these are a variety of breath doodles, the body scan drawing. There's aqua doodles. There's so much more with mandalas and making meaning of our marks and with emotions. So we have in the description box below, I have a Mindful Art for Self-Care workbook that you can download that has more prompts. And actually it's Mindful Art for parents, teachers, and children. So there's 5 more activities and also a coupon or a discount if you wanted to dive deeper. So I'm going to come back over to Mark as we're coming close to the hour, and I want to just come back together. And I will switch my video back over.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for that. It's absolutely fascinating and mindful, because just watching you do that and sort of taking part in my own sort of mind as we were doing that it's incredible what comes up, like you say. But I think that what you've sort of taken us through in terms of what you can do with it, what you can notice, how you can participate in your own way is really, really amazing. So yeah, thank you so much indeed.
Yeah, you're so welcome. And I love with these practices that you can, sometimes you might just be watching them. I have people mention on my YouTube channel, they'll just watch the videos and they notice a shift in them. But also that you can do these without the materials. You can do them with materials for 2 minutes. You can dive in for a half hour. You can do them for yourself or share them with others. So it's really versatile. And this is just kind of one small part, but I'm so grateful that you allowed me to share a bit about my experience and my love for these practices. And yeah, I appreciate you and what you're doing in the world for educators as well.
Thank you so much. We've got a couple of people. Hillary's just leaving as well. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Leanne had said that she started taking advantage of short moments, which is amazing. And also Hillary before had said that she's registered on your mindful art teacher training course as well, and said it's self-paced and tries to follow you on the live sessions too, which she's obviously done today here as well. So thank you so much indeed for doing that. So I really do appreciate that. Thank you, Cynthia, so much. As she mentioned, everything is in the description. You can click through, get everything that she's mentioned there. Thank you so much for watching. Thank you for being part of everything that's Education on Fire. And also, I love this collaboration and being able to sort of join the dots, as it were, and work with other people and bring Cynthia into your world and vice versa. So thank you very much indeed. Thank you for watching. I will look forward to seeing everyone on the next one. And Cynthia, thank you so much indeed again.
Thank you. I hope everyone has a great day.
Education is not the filling of a pail, but the lighting of a fire.